Claudio comes to pick up his friend Fabio, who gets released from jail after 8 months. Remembering their old memories, Claudio makes him realize that they have been sharing a brotherly friendship. He tries to convince him to be with their friends, whereas he wants to meet his wife and daughter first. His wife, Anna, is assisting her daughter in doing her homework, who shows the least interest. She is asking about her father, who has promised her to buy a hoverboard. Anna starts to play with her and finally convinces her to continue her homework. Fabio celebrates his release with Claudio and other friends at a club drinking. He wants to leave for his home, but his friend Claudio convinces him to stay as he is the guest of honor at the party. Claudio hangs up Anna's call. He gives him the keys to his shop and a packet of which he refuses to take, but Claudio, reminding him of the old days, convinces him to keep it. Claudio drives him to his dog wash shop, and as they go inside, he gets pleased to see his shop, which is in much nicer condition. He wants to tell all this to his wife. Claudio drops him to his home. He silently walks into his house, where he finds Anna sleeping on the couch. He gently wakes her up and tries to intimidate her. She turns him away as she smells the stink of a drink. He inquires about his daughter Sylvia and tells Anna that Claudio has cleaned his shop and that he has spent a good time with his friends. Talking about all these things, he falls asleep on the couch. Anna also lies her head on his shoulder to sleep. Gianni, an old chief, is observing some sticky notes and pictures on the wall of his office when Lo Russo comes to inform him that some old dog's remains are found around the old pit. Gianni asks about the chip that must have been removed from the dog's remains. He shows his disappointment and anger. Lo Russo goes out. The next morning, Fabio goes to his shop, where he meets his old friend Sheriff. He tells him that Claudio has cleaned his shop, whereas Sheriff reminds him that it is the same friend who threw him in jail. They go for coffee. Sensio takes Claudio to see Mario. He inquires about his black dog. Mario tells him that an accident happened to his dog. To Claudio's outrage, a man comes from a van and asks about the matter. Mario tells him that his black dog left his cage and went into Diablo's, and they fought. He sends Mario to make coffee and introduces himself to Claudio as Spartaco. When Mario brings coffee, Spartaco fills a cup, throws it onto Mario's face, and warns him to be careful about the dogs that people entrust to them. He orders him to free the black dog. Spartaco shows his interest in Claudio as he is a badass and might prove useful for him. Claudio takes his black dog with him. Fabio is at his shop washing a dog when a girl comes to pick up her dog and shows happiness to find his dog clean. She goes her way pleasantly. Claudio sends his dog to Fabio's dog wash shop to treat its wounds. Fabio starts curing his wounds and sends Sensio and the other man outside. They sit on a couch and begin to talk about sensuous stuff. Meanwhile, the chief knocks at Fabio's shop. He hides the two men in the rear room of the shop and lets the chief in. He inquires about some dogs who got injured in a dogfight. Fabio shows his ignorance by telling him that he has nothing to do with dogfights. Chief exits. Fabio is at a coffee shop with his friend Sheriff, who tells him about his being a struggling actor throughout his life. Fabio tells him that he wants to get his family out of there. Sheriff tells him that anyone can befool him, even his friends. Suddenly, Fabio rushes to pick Sylvia up from the pool. He reaches the pool to pick up his daughter. Claudio also gets there. Sylvia gets frightened at once on seeing him. He inspects Fabio for not being there at his shop and goes away, telling him that he would wait for him at 6 o'clock at his shop. On reaching his shop, Fabio finds Claudio already there. He behaves strangely with Fabio by dropping his keys and placing his boots on his hand when he tries to pick up the keys. Sheriff walks in there and inquires about the matter. At this, Claudio warns him to mind his own business. Then he goes away, asking Fabio to meet him at the warehouse at night. Fabio goes to meet a dealer to pick. He holds him a number to contact some high-ups. On his arrival at the warehouse, Fabio gives to Claudio and does not accept money for them. Claudio asks him to take a look at the dog, but he refuses. Claudio goes in angrily. When Fabio reaches home, he finds Anna waiting for him at the dinner table. She complains about not attending to her calls and not paying the bills. The fight gets worse and she goes to Sylvia's room, dropping her food into the bin. Fabio starts to play with his dog. The next morning, Claudio goes to different shops in the town to collect allowance by force. He walks into Fabio's shop and begins to throw the stuff around. When he tries to stop him, he starts to show him off that it is all because of him. Then he demands snow, and sniffing it he goes out, whereas Fabio starts to keep things in their place. Claudio goes to meet his boss, who rakes him for torturing the barman so much that he gets a heart attack. He tells him that he does not want the police there. Claudio goes out. Fabio meets Ranieri, dealer, who orders him to spread a new kind of his area. This is water-soluble, and it can give anyone certain powers or even kill anyone. Fabio gives his consent. At night, Fabio tells his wife that he will take her and their daughter away as he is going to earn a lot of money. Anna asks her to be careful. Two men come to give the bag of to Fabio, instructing him to give results in a week. The sheriff is watching them from outside. Fabio makes a dose and tastes it. Claudio takes Foglio's dog by force and takes it to Fabio's shop so that he may remove the dog's chip. When Claudio goes out, Fabio injects a syringe of that strange into the dog. He simply wants to save his life. Claudio takes the dog and exits. Fabio gets a wound on the back of his hand accidentally. To Claudio's shock, Foglio's dog killed the other one and Spartaco loses the bet. Fabio wakes up with terror when he sees Claudio in a nightmare attacking him. He observes the wound on his hand, which is getting worse. He also notices his eyes getting blood-colored. Fabio delivers bottles of water with mixed in it to young folks. Ranieri calls for him and rebukes him for not doing his duties well. He also promises him even bigger deals if he gets successful in it. The chief calls for Claudio for some investigation. He shows him some pictures of the dogs and asks if he knows anything about them. Claudio shows his ignorance. The chief lets him go and warns him that he is keeping an eye on him. When Lo Russo leaves, Chief calls his daughter and asks to spend some time together. He refuses to talk to his wife. Fabio and Sheriff are having coffee at a bar, whereas Claudio's friends are discussing the wreck that Foglio's dog has created that ends up in Spartaco losing the bet. Eventually, Fabio and Claudio's friends indulge in a physical fight that turns into such aggression that Claudio is brutally beaten by Sheriff. At night, Fabio wakes up in sheer unrest because of the wound on his hand. Anna helps him in bandaging the wound. Everything sounds ringing in his head. Claudio comes to Sheriff's shop with his companions to take his revenge. They brutally eliminated him by slaying his head. A fisherman finds Sheriff's head on the pool's edge. Lo Russo shows his suspicion of Claudio while discussing with the chief. On being told that Sensio has given Sylvia lipstick as a gift, Fabio goes and beats him badly in anger. He hardly escapes death. Claudio rebukes him when he comes to know the matter. Chief and Lo Russo visit his shop to investigate Sheriff's murder. They express their doubt about Claudio and ask him if he knows anything about it. He shows ignorance. When they leave, Fabio starts crying. Sensio informs Claudio about Chief's visit to Fabio's shop. Claudio comes to Fabio's house with his men and takes his wife and daughter hostage. When Fabio arrives, Anna takes Sylvia to her room. Sensio points his pistol at Fabio while Claudio abuses Anna sexually in front of Fabio, threatening them to keep their mouths shut. They leave, kicking Fabio's dog to the wall. The dog dies instantly. Fabio takes his dog to bury outside, leaving his wife and daughter weeping behind. He gets so emotional while burying his dog. So many dogs gather around him. Ranieri sends 2 men to beat Fabio. He asks for the reason for their arrival and tells them that Ranieri's plan is working, but they move forward to beat him. As they approach, Fabio beats one of them while the other one tries to run away by getting into his car. But Fabio catches him and bites on his arm so intensely that he starts to shriek and runs away. Fabio washes his wound and covers it with a bandage. He hits the mirror with anger looking into it. Gianni is informed that a chip of a burnt dog is found, which leads them to an abandoned warehouse where a dogfight is organized. They hope to get the criminals arrested. Claudio comes to meet Fabio. He shows his embarrassment and tries to justify his actions by blaming his being high on drugs. But Fabio refuses to listen to him and says that he cannot forgive his disrespect. Claudio reminds him of their old friendship, which is much more than being mere friends. Fabio starts to prepare certain strange things like making a cage and sharpening his weapons. Memories of Claudio and what he has done to him start ringing in his head. He tells Sensio that he wants to meet Claudio and that he would wait for him at his shop. He also has an illusion of a sheriff working in his workshop. When Claudio comes to his shop, he shows him a well-sized cage. On his inquiry, he tells him that he has a plan for both of them to get rich. He asks Claudio to hide in the cage when Ranieri will come to meet him. Claudio will attack Ranieri from the cage and eliminate him. Claudio gives his consent. Fabio asks him to get into the cage to test its size. When he gets into the cage, Fabio bolts it. He asks him to get him out of the cage. Fabio cuts his fingers. He begs for mercy, reminding him of their friendship. At this, Fabio lets him out of the cage. He attacks Fabio on coming out of the cage. Fabio hits his head with a hammer. Then he binds his hands and hooks him up with a chain. He cuts his tongue and begins to cut his skull. He tears his brain open. When the chief arrives there, he has already eliminated Claudio. Lo Russo opens fire at him and eliminates him. He goes to the station, whereas the chief stays there. He finds and a bag full of money there. Claudio's companions and Spartaco get arrested. A letter and a bag of money are dropped by the front door of Anna. Fabio expresses his love for her in the letter.